On a dark and deserted battlefield, a giant dragon emerges from the smoke in all its CGI glory. The dragon is faced with a group of humans that are here to challenge it, but it calls them all foolish for even daring to think they could ever stand a chance in a fight with him. But the humans are determined and will not back down from it. The Shadow World represents the worst calamity known to man. It has slowly shrouded the world in a thick layer of black fog which is impossible to see through. We don't know what goes on in that black fog, but one thing we do know is that no living creatures can survive on the land it corrupts. So with the fog slowly devouring the earth, there is only one way for the humans to survive, and that is by conquering the Shadow World. And the current challenge before them, Boromir, is the final obstacle to saving their world. Boromir charges up the fire blast and launches it towards the humans, but as they prepare for impact, the blast suddenly disappears as one of them uses his magic. Boromir is shocked by this but prepares to attack again regardless. However, Dazir is able to analyze the magic patterns within Boromir and use his special magic to seal all the dragon's spells. As a result, a large chunk of Boromir's offense and defense has been sealed, allowing the rest of the party to attack with full force. Boromir tries to attack them again, but the tank is able to block it, leaving him defenseless to the damage dealers. And with a joint effort and combining all the magic power that they got, the swordswoman is able to finally slay the dragon. Boromir curses them all as he meets his end, and the sky finally returns to normal. The group sits together and celebrates their victory over the Shadow World, but they wonder why they haven't seen the level cleared message that would usually pop up by now. Dazir thinks it might just be taking a little more time than usual, so they should wait for it a bit since they killed Boromir. But even with their victory, the losses that they suffered along the way to get to this result are immeasurable. Of the 150 million people that came here to fight Boromir, only the 6 of them managed to survive. The tolls were heavy, but since they are meant to be celebrating, the priest wants to talk about something more lighthearted. And here's a sight for sore eyes, a hero party actually acknowledging the contributions of the main character in the fight. They praise Dazir because without him being there to seal Boromir's magic, they would never have been able to defeat him. But with all the power that Dazir possesses, they ask why he had gone unknown in the war up until this point. He answers that it is because he was a commoner that no one took him seriously, which is a shame because if he had received more support to grow stronger, he could definitely have reached greater heights. They all talk about what they plan to do after they are able to return to Earth, so they ask Dazir what he plans to do next, maybe return to the Hebrian Academy for instance. Once asked this, he remembers his childhood friend and how she died on the battlefield, meaning he has nothing more he wishes to protect. But soon after, the boss music starts playing again and they realize something is still going on with the dragon. It doesn't make sense since they are all sure that they killed the dragon, but then the mage realizes what is going on. The dragon's heart stores an inconceivably large amount of mana which circulates through the body. However, once killed, the heart will stop and all that mana now has nowhere to go, meaning that the dragon's heart is turned into a high-grade nuke from which they cannot escape. In a desperate final attempt at survival, they prepare all their defenses against the blast, but in the end, they know that they cannot block a blast of that magnitude, and even Dazir's magic interference power can do nothing against a ball of pure magical energy. They all prepare to die and Dazir looks down at his hands wondering if this is really the end for him. However, after the blast, he opens his eyes once more and is surprised to see that he is not dead. He finds himself in a building and looks at his reflection, realizing that he is once again in his youth. He hears applause behind him and turns around to see that a speech is being given to the new students of Hebrian. Dazir recognizes the woman as Professor Bridget, and as she continues with the speech, she tells the students that not all of them will be enrolled in the academy as only 600 students are to be accepted. They will take a test to decide who those 600 will be, and as she announces the test, Dazir recalls it as well to clear a Shadow World, proving to him that he is really in his past. He walks away from the crowd to try and process everything that just happened. The years of fighting, the destruction that befell the world, and all the people that died along the way, none of that has happened yet. After confirming that he actually isn't in a dream, he sits down to ponder what all this means, but he is brought out of his train of thought by this girl, Lidoria, who is the second-year student assigned to assist Dazir with his test. Dazir greets her and recognizes her as one of the geniuses of the academy. She wields fire magic and ranked first in the academy entrance exam. While thinking about all that, he ended up staring at her for a bit too long, causing her to ask if anything is wrong, so he says he is just nervous about the test. Lidoria tells him not to be nervous because the Shadow World they'll be going into is one that was artificially created to be suitable for a test. But as she checks his charts to see what his combat ability is, she notices that he is a commoner. She personally doesn't have a problem with him being a commoner, but with how the school works, even if he passes the test, he will be placed in the beta class. Desir remembers all about the discrimination at the academy and how all the nobles are put in the alpha class and all the commoners in the beta class. Due to this, even if you possess extraordinary talent like Desir does, you can't get a proper education because of your status, crushing the talent of many commoner mages. Before he can worry about that though, he still has to pass the entrance test. So Lidoriya takes him to the exam hall where many other students are waiting to be tested as well. As Desir sees the room, he feels a sense of nostalgia for it, but Lidoriya is a bit surprised by his lack of surprise after seeing such a big room. He tries to brush it off, saying he has seen something like this before, but Lidoriya knows that what he is saying can't possibly be true since this place is the only one of its kind in the whole world as of now. She's a bit suspicious of him, but doesn't have time to ask any more about it since the exam is about to start soon. They hurry to the exam room, but before they can get there, they are stopped by this guy, Elhaim. He and Lidoriya don't get along at all, and she isn't trying to hide that fact. He tries to tick her off a bit by calling her short and slow, but despite all the insults he is throwing at her, she has still beaten him in previous fight, so she hits him with the L+ ratio. Since he is clearly not winning the argument with Lidoriya, he switches over to Desir and upon finding out that he is a commoner, mocks him greatly for it. He doesn't think Desir has what it takes to pass the entrance exam, but even if he did manage to pass by some miracle, he would still only end up in the beta class. Now that Elhaim has said that, Lidoriya has started to take it personally, and she tells Desir that he had better pass the entrance exam no matter what. They continue to the exam room, but Desir is still feeling a bit disillusioned with all that is going on since he still can't accept that this is his reality. However, as he gets to the room, he is spotted by his childhood friend, and at that moment he decides to hell with how or why. I'm going to make sure that tragedy never happens again. He calls out to her as Romantica, but by this point in time, he had yet to actually meet her, so acting all friendly with her would be strange. So when she asks him how he knew her name, he explains it by saying they are in the same testing group and her name is displayed. She accepts it and wishes him good luck in the test and walks off. Lidoriya tells Desir that he is going to be in Group D and gives him a briefing on the test he will be taking today. It is a race in the Irensi Plains, a beginner-level shadow world. But while it may be called a shadow world, it isn't nearly as dangerous as the real thing as it is created specifically for the purpose of testing students with safety systems in place. So upon taking any fatal damage, the student would be evacuated immediately and receive medical attention. The damage won't necessarily be coming from the shadow world either, since the use of magic and combat are allowed. The other students in the test are free to attack each other at will. Immediately after saying this, Elhaim shows up again to mock Lidoriya and tell her that there is no way that Desir will be able to pass, especially since his mentee is a magic knight, Azist. The news that Azist is a magic knight shocks Lidoriya, but Desir already knows all about Azist from the time they spent fighting together. She is an incredibly talented knight and can use vision magic, which is impossible to inverse. She was also a trustworthy teammate till the end, so Desir is happy to see her again, though she still isn't much of a talker. Elhaim has claimed victory on this one, and its Azist has a very good track record and all the accolades of a magic knight, while right now Desir, well, he's just Desir. Still, Lidoriya says he just got lucky with a very skilled mentee, and that doesn't prove anything about his own ability, but he gives her an L and walks away with his first petty victory for the day. Once he is gone, Lidoriya turns to Desir and tells him that frankly, his chances of winning against a magic knight are pretty slim, but even with those slim odds, he shouldn't lose heart and give up over it. An announcement is made over the intercoms that the test for Group D is about to begin, so they all head to the front of the portal and await its commencement. Desir takes one final look at Romantica for a reminder of what he is trying to protect, and as the portal opens, he walks inside and is teleported into the Shadow World. As he arrives in the Shadow World, the rules of the game are explained to all participants. They are going to be racing to the edge of the Shadow World to complete the test. However, only the first 3 people to cross the finish line will pass, where all forms of force or interference is permitted, but anyone who receives any fatal damage will be immediately disqualified from the test. Everyone is ready, so they all line up at the starting line. While lined up, Desir is next to Azist and thinks about how she also managed to survive as long as him and died the same way as well. So there is a chance that she also came back with her future memories as well, but he can't be sure of it. Suddenly, Azist calls out Desir's name, and that gets him excited because it might mean that she actually remembers him from the future. But upon asking how she knew his name, she says she saw it on the group test display. She tells him that his magic circle is of the lowest rank and his physical abilities are of the lowest level, so he will have no future here even if he continues training hard. For how she is talking, Desir deduces that she likely doesn't have any of her future memories, and she continues speaking, saying she noticed him staring at her a lot, but if it is because he is being cautious of her, then he doesn't have to worry because she has no intention of interfering with his race since she views him as weak. The countdown to the race begins and everyone gets ready to take off running, but as soon as the count hits 0, Aziz gets an immediate early lead and is followed by 2 others, leaving the rest in the dust. Désir and Romantica are left to play catch-up and are running side by side, but while running, Romantica accidentally knocks over a cute mob in the grass and marvels at how cute it is. This makes Désir smile because he remembers how much Romantica loves cute things, but from her perspective, she has never met this guy in her life and he is talking to her an awful lot for an exam, so she concludes that Désir must be hitting on her and tells him to focus on the race instead of her. Désir agrees with her but says that at this rate, both of them will be disqualified from the race, but she tells him not to lump her in with himself, and that she won't get disqualified like him. He just smiles and nods, which makes Romantica even more angry, but he's having too much fun to care since he finally gets to spend time with her again. Suddenly, he notices something in the distance and immediately pushes Romantica out of the way, narrowly dodging a flaming arrow that was shot at her. The attacker is the last competitor who is trying to thin out his competition to give himself a better shot at victory, but as he fires another fire blast, Romantica counters with a wind spell and fires it at him. Both spells collide, kicking up a huge dust cloud, but through that dust, though the attacker's spell was destroyed, Romantica's spell is still on course and hits, eliminating him from the test and leaving only 5 participants. Romantica thanks Désir for his help with saving her just now, but she says by eliminating that guy, the score is now settled between them, so she doesn't owe him anything more. He just smiles and nods again, making her angry once more. Désir points out that the others are still quite a long way ahead of them in the race, so she will need to hurry if she wants to try and catch up to them, but she says there is no need for that since she has a way to deal with that problem. She had hoped to save this for a little bit later, but with how things have gone, she needs to stop them, so she uses her magic to launch a spell. Meanwhile, the professors are judging the students in a separate room and talk about how it is great that they have a magic night in Group D, but then another professor mentions that there is also a commoner in the group Désir, and they don't seem to like commoners at all, so they immediately think Désir is not going to pass the test, but Professor Bridget seems a little more intrigued by him. Near the front, Aziz is still in the lead of the race and is followed by 2 others. One of them has completely given up on all hope of ever passing Aziz, but at least if he keeps up his pace here, he will be able to stay within the top 3 and pass the test. However, suddenly, the wind starts to push them backwards, forcing him to plant his sword into the ground to keep from getting blown away by it. He looks forward to see how this is affecting Aziz, but she is simply cutting through the wind and continuing at her previous speed. Seeing her press forward, he is motivated to stand his ground and survive the wind, but that tree had other plans. The 2 people behind Aziz get eliminated, leaving only 3 participants in the game. With only 3 participants left in the game, they can all pass if they don't fight each other since there is no reward for eliminating someone. But who said logic had to apply? Romantica wants to eliminate Désir next just because she can. She tells him that he had better drop out of the test before he gets hurt, but Désir asks why she feels the need to go this far. And her reason is that the fact he keeps smiling pisses her off. She tells him once more to drop out before she hurts him, but he refuses. She is shocked that he still refuses to drop out after seeing what her magic can do, but Désir just keeps smiling, angering her more and more until she just decides to finish him off herself. She casts several magic circles in the air and uses Wind Strike on Désir. She is sure that the blast must have eliminated him, so she starts to walk away, but while doing so, Désir tells her that her ability to control multiple magic circles at once is pretty impressive. She turns around to see that he is completely unharmed from that attack, and even worse, he starts lecturing her on how she should spend a little more time casting the spell, so that it turns out stronger. Because she cast the spell so fast, all he had to do was make a slight adjustment to the trajectory, and it missed him entirely. She yells that it was probably just a coincidence that her previous blast had missed, but she will make sure that the next one will surely hit. However, with one wave of his hand, Désir once again causes all the spells to miss him entirely. She realizes that what Désir is doing is inversing her spell, but she can't accept that he is able to do such a thing because Désir is meant to be at the lowest circle of magic, so it shouldn't be possible for him to use such advanced magic. She tries her spell again, but predictably, it does nothing to him and he easily destroys it, proving that he is indeed inversing her spell and is at a much higher level of skill than her. She must be regretting not just leaving him alone because now he has every right to eliminate her out of spite. However, she isn't planning on going out so easily and tries to overwhelm his ability to nullify her spells by firing off several of them at once. However, Désir has dealt with much worse and is still able to handle them and even has time to have an internal monologue thinking about how Romantica is definitely stronger than most students at the academy, but not strong enough to change her fate in the future. So she needs to become much stronger this time, and to make that happen, Désir needs to be the one that wins this race. He finally gets a little serious and uses his power to nullify all of Romantica's spells along with her magic circles, and leaves her exhausted from all the magic she has used. He could eliminate her right now, but he still likes her, so he starts lecturing her on some things she forgot to take into account when she attacked him again. Désir can do other things than just inverse spells, so he can cast regular spells as well. In this case, Grease on himself. Grease is a spell that negates friction for the target, but it is usually used as an attack to knock an enemy off his feet, so she wonders why he would use that on himself. Désir moves on to the second point. This is a race, not a battle, meaning you don't win unless you cross the finish line, so fighting here is only a waste of time. And lastly, even if you get severely damaged, you won't die here, so he is able to do something like launch a fire spell at himself. She starts saying it is crazy to hit yourself with a fire spell intentionally, but before she can finish, he has already launched himself, knocking her to the ground, where she realizes that she just took an L here and she can't even be mad about it. Meanwhile, Azist is about to cross the finish line, but she notices that Désir is fast approaching her and realizes that at his current speed, he will catch up to and pass her soon, so she turns around and prepares to face him head-on while apologizing for calling him weak since he can clearly handle himself. She prepares several magic circles and intends to fire them, forcing him to deactivate the Grease spell and begin trying to inverse the magic circles that she has cast. She realizes that he is taking control of her spells, so she fires them before he can take full control of all of them, forcing Désir to use the spells he controls to deflect most of the damage away from himself. Azist is impressed with his quick thinking and that he was able to avoid taking a fatal blow after all of that, but she still has to win, so she intends to cast a spell quickly so as to not give enough time to inverse it. She launches an attack at Désir, but he is once again able to take control and redirects it to explode behind him while simultaneously casting Grease on himself again. He then uses that force to launch himself forward and towards Azist, but while she thinks he is coming in for an attack, he slips past, telling her not to focus too much on beating him, and crosses the finish line first. She lost sight of the goal of the game, and with that, he has now won the race and Azist has received her first L, as well as Romantica, who is still trying to make it to the finish in bouncy fashion. After the results of the matches have all been gathered, the teachers begin the totally not rigged class placements. Trust me, bro. By some amount of sheer coincidence, all the commoners end up in beta class and the nobles in alpha class. What a crazy turn of events. The snobby teachers take great pleasure in being able to keep the commoners out of the alpha class, but the other teachers, including Professor Bridget, are against the complete segregation of all the commoners and nobles, so she has a special recommendation to make to the council. As Désir, although he is a commoner, came in first in his race while beating all the other noble candidates and even the knight, she would like to place him in alpha class. This seems to be a very progressive move and could lead to the change of the status quo. But never underestimate the ability of the snobby nobles to gatekeep, as Désir still ends up in beta class. He isn't too bothered by it since he was also in beta class last year, but what he is really worried about here is Romantica, as she's pretty distraught about her results. She was placed in beta class, along with the rest of the commoners in a classroom that looks like it survived a cluster bombing. The teacher for the class explains that magic circles are the metric for the power of a magician. He draws a diagram on the board to demonstrate the different magic circle levels. The highest is 7 and the lowest is 1. And with his snobby lips, he firmly states that all the commoners in class are weak and you have to have a circle levels of at least 2 to be able to get into alpha class, but all of them only have a magic circle level of 1. However, Romantica is at level 2, so she doesn't understand why she was put in this class. And on top of that, she was put in the same class as Désir and right next to him as a matter of fact. Him and his annoying smile. Meanwhile, Désir thinks about the talk he had with Professor Bridget after the test. They met each other over some tea and Désir thanked her for all the help she has given him since she used to volunteer at the orphanage that he was in. She is happy he remembers her and congratulates him on beating Azist. But despite clearly proving that he was way better than the average noble magician, she still could not get past the nobles to place him in alpha class. He knows the nobles here are religious in their gatekeeping, but if he was turned away from alpha class despite being strong, then there are surely others in beta class that are powerful, but were never given the adequate training to reach their true potential. So he's going to make it his mission to find those people and raise their talents in preparation for the disaster to come. Later that day, Romantica is sitting depressed over being in beta class when this guy walks up to her. Donetta asks if she is Romantica Eru, daughter of Baron Eru, and after she confirms that, Donetta says he is a new student in alpha class and is here to invite her on his party. He joined the Blue Moon Party, which is made up of the most talented people in alpha class, so he wants her to join with him because her skills are excellent and she has a good lineage. This would be a good opportunity for her to get in with the Alpha class students, so she's about to accept the offer. But then Donetta states his conditions. In return for inviting her into the Blue Moon party, he wants her to go out with him. He has known her for 20 seconds and has already asked her out. Romantika is shocked by this sudden proposal and backs away thinking he can't be serious about this. But he is very serious and says it was love at first sight when he laid his eyes on her in the test area. He thinks it's unfair that she was placed in beta class while she is a noble, so if she wants, she can come with him. She asks for some time to think about it, so Donna leaves her with a necklace as proof of his love and hopes to hear back from her soon. And as Romantika ponders what just happened, she gets startled by Desir that has popped up behind her. She falls to the ground and tells him not to sneak up on her like that, asking what he wants from her. Desir says he has the same proposal that Donata had for her, minus the going out part. She finds it funny that he would think she would accept to join his party after she just got invited to the Blue Moon party. But Desir remembers that the same thing happened to her in the past life, and it was the biggest mistake she ever made, so he is trying to stop her from doing it again. However, she is none the wiser to Desir's good intentions and just tells him to leave her alone. With no other options, he pulls out a letter and asks Romantika to read it when she is alone. She thinks this must be some kind of love letter, but Desir tells her to destroy the letter after she's done reading it for her own sake. This gets her curious, and she opens the letter after he leaves, but the look on her face tells me it was something she didn't want anyone to know about. While walking through the halls, Desir thinks about how Romantika will react to the letter he gave her, but she'll probably just get mad. He then notices a boy on a chair sitting outside, and he has finally found one of the other talented people he has been looking for. Pram was one of the fastest swordsmen on the battlefield in the future, and in that timeline, he had almost no training at all. So with the right training and motivation from Desir this time around, he can become so much more. As Desir is thinking all this, Romantika runs up to him and wants to ask where he got the information in that letter from, but Desir tells her to be quiet for a bit since the practice matches are about to begin. Romantika looks over at Pram and is absolutely smitten by the levels of cuteness she was witnessing. But to be clear, he's a boy despite all indicators saying otherwise. As the practice matches start, takes his time picking out a sword and picks a large sword, which is just as big as him. This shocks Desir because, as he remembers, Pram didn't use that kind of sword on the battlefield. Romantika also wonders if he will actually be able to handle swinging around such a big sword and heavy sword, but they will get their answer soon as the match is about to begin. Pram introduces himself with the Alpha class student Percival, whom he is up against, only interested in beating on a Beta class student that he thinks is weaker than him, so he skips the introduction and goes straight to the fight. However, despite being small, Pram packs a punch with his swings and surprises Percival as he is getting pushed back by a Beta class student, and he can't handle that kind of embarrassment, so goes on a full force attack. However, the Pram is still able to hold his ground and would be a clear winner for the match if he wasn't so inexperienced with the great sword, once again making Desir question why he isn't using his normal weapon. Pram is still leading the match due to his strength and power alone, but after some back and forth with Percival, Pram's inexperience with such a big sword finally catches up to him and he swings wildly, missing the mark altogether and being unable to regain his balance. This gives Percival the chance to counter and knock him to the ground, but he knows he just got lucky. Pram admits defeat as his sword has been knocked out of his hand, but Percival's pride has been hurt considering Pram is way more talented than him. So he starts punching him, prompting Desir to jump into the arena to save him while the world's most useless referee stands there and does nothing. Desir was quite far, so Pram had to take a few punches before he was able to arrive and get between them. He tells Percival to back off since he has already won the match and calls him jealous of Pram's talent. This angers him and he tries to hit Desir on the head, but he just blocks the blow, breaking the sword in the process and giving Percival the look of, "Leave now, or you are dead." Percival gets the message and backs off for now, saying he will never forget Desir's face. After that whole mess, Pram and Romantika take Desir to a waiting room to get him bandaged up after the injury he sustained on his arm from that block. However, it's not as bad as you would think since he used magic to absorb most of the damage, so the harm done to him was minimal. But even with that being the case, his arm is still going to take a while to heal, so Pram still apologizes for getting him involved and also for making an enemy out of one of the Alpha class students. Through his heartfelt apology, all Romantika could think about is how cute he is. Pram introduces himself to Desir, but before Desir can do the same, Romantika steps in and introduces herself first, and she keeps doing this throughout Pram and Desir's conversation because of how cute he is. After their introductory conversation, Pram thanks Desir once again for his help today and says if there is anything that he ever needs him for, do not hesitate to call on him. Desir says he appreciates it and will definitely be taking him up on that offer, and as Pram leaves, he looks to Romantika and asks her if she wants to talk now. They head to the back of a school building and Romantika asks if he told anyone else about the contents of the letter he wrote. He says he hasn't, but that the snobby professors are aware of it, and that is why they put her in beta class to spike her skills. Romantika's secret is that her father was a merchant who made a Fortune 500 company and was rolling in the big bucks. So to have a better life with his daughter, he bought a noble title from a poor noble family and received the name Eru. While he is indeed a noble now, the snobbiest of the snobby nobles don't see it that way and are always ready to gatekeep a commoner even if they are filthy rich. For this reason, Désir wants Romantika to reject the offer from Donata because Blue Moon is only open to nobles, and once they find out about this, those gates will shut on her harder than anything she's ever experienced. And if she thinks she can have Donata protect her, he is just as bad as the other nobles when it comes to treatment of commoners. So Désir once again extends the offer to have her join his party, making Romantika think he plans to blackmail her with the information he has. But no, Désir is too classy for that and has another card up his sleeve. Pram. If Pram is going to be there as well, then she agrees to join since he makes a valid point. But she makes it clear that she still finds him to be really annoying. We see a memory of Pram with his mother as she tries to convince him that his father still loves him despite leaving for the milk and never looking back. At the very least, he was left with a sword, which his mom says was a gift from his father, proving that he is indeed loved by him. As long as the sword exists, it will serve as proof that his father still thinks about him and cares for him. Well, there goes the sword. At the same time, the mood of the dream shifts, and as his mother says he loves you over and over again, Pram realizes something. The grocery store is closed on Sundays. Pram wakes up from the nightmare, but reality can often be crueler, as he has that sword on his wall, but still no milk. Later that day, Désir takes Romantika and Pram to an office to get their party officially formed, and as he knocks on the door, he is told to come in by Professor Bridget. She tells them to all sit and provides snacks for them before getting down to business. She asks Désir why he wants to form a party here, and he immediately answers saying he wants to get promoted to the Alpha class by winning the next ranking exam. Pram asks if it is really all that hard to win the ranking exams, so Professor Bridget explains the principle. The ranking exam is a tournament to determine the ranks of the students in each grade and is held between both Alpha and Beta class students. The requirements for participation are teams of 3 to 6 students where the parties engage in battles against one another, and the winner gets to rank up with each victory. That puts parties with 6 members at a considerable advantage, but individual achievements and supporting teammates also play a role in determining your level contribution to the victory of your team's success. The point of the tournament is to assess the various skills of the students, but all of that is just the qualifier rounds. Those who successfully qualify will move on to the final battle, which takes place in a shadow world. The top 9 of the battle are given the title of single rankers, and as a single rankers, one would be able to advance from Beta to Alpha class, which is what Désir is aiming for. But unsurprisingly, the poor Beta class students with no support given have managed to advance to Alpha class exactly 0 times since the school was formed. And additionally, all the students that make it to the finals have always been from Alpha class, so statistically, their chances of winning the tournament are smaller than my PP. However, that is exactly why Désir wants to do it, because with such slim chances, if they were to win the tournament with the minimum number of party members allowed, it would send a message and prove the other professors who say that Beta class students are too stupid to be worth teaching are wrong. Professor Bridget supports his plan and thinks it would be great if they could become single rankers because it might finally lead to some good change in the school's unfair policies. She turns to Romantika and Pram and informs them that party formation requires direct confirmation of intent to join the party from all members, so she asks if they are fully prepared to be a part of Désir's party after hearing what he plans to do. They obviously agree and all head over to the training grounds. There is a wide open space which provides an especially conducive environment for people to train their sword and magic skills. And then there's this. The other place is only for Alpha students, so they are left with this murder scene of a room. And on top of the cobwebs, creaking floors, and high likelihood to find a body somewhere in here, there is also an army of rats just chilling here. They can handle many things, but rats are not one of them. Pram passes out and Romantika jumps on Désir, begging him to not force them to use this room. He agrees that the rats are a problem, but there aren't any other rooms available for them to use, and Professor Bridget had to personally find this one for them, so they're kinda stuck with it. However, rats are a definite no-go for Romantika, and she is not gonna deal with it, so with things as they are, Désir tells her that he'll deal with the rats, but the cleaning is going to be up to her, meaning they are still stuck here. Pram faints again, and by the time he wakes up, the room has been cleaned spotless, and Romantika looks like she has seen some shit. Pram is really apologetic for being unconscious and not helping them out at all, but Désir says it's fine and they should all head back to start training. Romantika really doesn't want to train after all she's been through, but it is necessary if they are going to become single rankers. She is starting to regret joining the party, but agrees to do it anyway. Her first training lesson will involve improving her magic accuracy, but she says she is already pretty good at that and summons 7 magic circles, proclaiming she can handle all of them. Désir says that's great, but instructs her to fire all of them at once and hit the target, which she does. But they don't all hit the center, so that will be her first training target. She thinks it will be impossible to aim all the spells at the exact same spot, but Désir knows she is capable of it since her future self pulled off that exact feat against a monster once. She still isn't confident in her ability to do it, so Désir jokingly says she can just be the room cleaner if she doesn't want to train with them. So she finally caves and agrees to do whatever he tells her to do for training. And this is wherever training begins, with a white ball which she has to move into another circle. She tries just throwing it at first, but Désir clarifies that she has to use magic to do it, otherwise she won't accomplish anything. She has to manipulate the air currents around the room to move the ball, which shouldn't be too hard since wind magic is her specialty. She agrees to give it a try and starts the exercise, and after a few moments is able to make the ball move. Désir compliments her on a job well done and tells her to keep repeating the action until she perfects it, while he moves on to Pram's training. But while Pram is excited to see what kind of training Désir could have in store for him, Désir says there is nothing for him to teach Pram. Pram has already perfected his sword technique and is strong enough to win the tournament as he is now, but Pram doesn't think so considering his previous loss. Everything Désir said is true, and it all depends on Pram using his full potential. In the future, he tore through his enemies with nothing but a rapier, so he questions why he would choose a big sword in battle. He clearly wasn't used to it and could move around well with it, so using a rapier would make much more sense for his combat style. Pram doesn't really want to talk about it, but Désir tells him it's for the good of the team, so he would like to know, so Pram asks to speak with him privately. He takes him to his room where the rapier that his father left for him is. He has never seen his father's face since he was a noble and Pram's mother was a commoner, so the only thing his father left behind for him was this rapier. Désir recognizes the weapon as the one which Pram used in the future, so he asks to see it up close. Pram first learned about the sword when he was 6, and taking it as a sign of his father's love, he went down the path of the sword and trained tirelessly in hopes that he would one day reunite with his father and be a son whom he could take pride in. However, as his mother was on her deathbed, she told Pram to never go looking for his father because he lives in a completely different world from him and would only cause trouble for him. For nobility, a child of the commoner would be a complete disgrace, so if Pram had tried to visit his father, he likely wouldn't have come back alive in an attempt to keep the being an illegitimate son quiet. Désir realizes that Pram's mom probably knew what would happen if he ever found his father, which is why she tried to discourage him from looking. Pram came to the academy in order to find his father since nobles from many different countries come here, and he had hoped to find some clues on who he was. While here, he went to an appraiser with the sword to try getting some clues from it, but the appraiser informed him that the sword had almost no value at all. Pram was devastated that the sword he had treasured as his father's one sign of love towards him was nothing more than a glorified paperweight. After that discovery, he gave up on finding his father and swears that he will never use that sword again. The next day, while training, Pram is using a different sword which is smaller than the giant one he used before, and Romantika has gotten a lot better at moving the ball around with her magic, but still has a long way to go with her accuracy. However, Désir suddenly remembers something and goes over to Pram to ask to see the rapier again because he wants to confirm something, but Pram says he won't be able to see it because it was already sold. We see Désir walking along the old town road he used to know and reminiscing over the time he spent here in the previous timeline. Then Pram directs him to go down an alleyway which he has never been on before. He is led to a pawn shop which has a sign outside saying no refunds whatsoever, meaning this place is obsessed with money, and if you came here to buy a phone, you would probably find a G phone of 15. As they stand at the entrance, Pram tells Désir he doesn't want to ever hold that sword again, but Désir knows that the sword is too insanely valuable for him to lose, and he isn't going to let Pram basically spend 16 Bitcoin on a sandwich. They head inside and knock on the door and are greeted by this big black man who invites them as customers. The store owner, Wuju, greets them and recalls that he met Pram yesterday while he hasn't seen Désir before. He asks if they are here to buy or sell an item, and Désir responds that they are here to get the sword Pram sold yesterday. Wuju reminds them of the no refunds policy, but Désir was aware of that and says they are here to buy it. The man smiles and pulls out the sword, recounting that he had told Pram that the sword had no value as a sword, but there is something incredibly valuable about it which Pram is shocked to hear. Désir says it's a Kimuvan, which surprises the man as didn't think Désir would know about those. They are like gifts that nobles usually give to people whom they love, and as he continues to speak, Pram starts to realize that he done fucked up. Dazir gets down to business and asks him how much it costs, to which Wuju responds saying it costs 40 silver. Pram is outraged because he only received 3 silver for it, but the man retorts that he paid for his sword, which this thing is worthless as, but right now, he is selling it as a Kamuvan. So Pram just got swindled and the dude tells him tough luck kid. Dazir knows how things go and just gives the man the money he's asking for and buys the sword. The dude is surprised that Dazir bought it with no hesitation at all, but he is still sure that he won't be able to figure out how to use that thing since he also couldn't. However, Dazir analyzes it and hands it to Pram, who is hesitant to take it, but he decides to trust Dazir. Dazir instructs him to remove the sheath of the sword, and as he does, he sees the sword glow in a brilliant blue light, shocking even Wuju. The blade is made of neither iron nor steel. It is made from a metal known as blancium. It is harder than steel, but lighter than a feather and only used to make the finest of weapons imaginable. They are about to leave, but Wuju is salty about losing out on such an amazing sword and threatens them to leave it behind because he wants it back or his guard is going to beat them up. Dazir points out that things here are sold as is and a payment was already made, so in his own words, tough luck old man. Wuju instructs his guard to take the sword back from them, and the guard immediately attacks Dazir, but he is able to dodge it easily. Wuju yells for the guard to take care of the two of them already, but Pram gets in front of Dazir and says he will protect him. However, this whole thing could have been avoided by just waiting until you were outside to check out how great the sword is. Regardless, Pram isn't going to hold back against the guard. The guard charges forward to swing at Pram, but in an instant Pram disappears and the barbarian hits nothing but air. While the fight is going on, Dazir watches and thinks about how well the sword suits Pram, but even with such great speed, if a single one of those hits were to land, it could easily kill him, so he has to be extremely careful with how he dodges. Pram begins to charge up his power to attack once more, and the barbarian is beginning to enjoy the fight and starts to really get into it, acknowledging him as a warrior. He swings his sword for a huge strike, but Pram is too fast and blitzes his way behind the barbarian while performing his own slashes. The barbarian recognizes that Pram is much faster than him and goes into a defensive stance to block all of the incoming strikes. But even with the hail of strikes coming his way, the barbarian is still having a lot of fun with the fight. Pram leaps back after completing his attacks, but all the strikes were only flesh wounds on the barbarian's body. He has to aim for a vital spot as he intends to take him out, so he goes for a vital spot. However, with his lack of experience, the barbarian easily sees through the attack. Pram gets kicked back to the edge of the shop, which is ridiculously spacious, and falls to his knees, but the Dazir calls out to him saying he should believe in his father and the intentions he had when he gave him the sword. Pram gets up once more and raises his sword to fight. He doesn't know why his father gave him the sword or what the inscriptions on it say, but he will trust that his father believed in him and do everything possible to gain victory with the sword he gave him. He charges at the barbarian again and has the bug sword swung at him, but this time he can tell that it is a trap, and as the giant switches to a punch, he is able to evade and get behind him. He charges again, but the barbarian sees it coming and prepares a counterattack. However, Pram counters the counterattack and slices the sword in half and knocks the barbarian out. Dazir congratulates Pram on a job well done, and they prepare to leave, but Wuju laughs and says that door is fortified and the only way they will be getting out of here is if they leave the sword behind. However, Pram goes with his own option and just cuts the door down. As they leave, Dazir asks Pram if he is hungry so they can get something to eat out in town. He walks over to a meat stand and buys 2 long sticks of meat for him and Pram to enjoy. Pram thanks him for the meat, but also for helping him get his sword back and believing in him. Dazir says it's only natural for him to do so because they are in a party together, and party members look out for each other. Pram is brought to tears by Dazir's words since a whole lot of tragic stuff happened to him before he got here, and he was even scammed shortly after. But now he has someone whom he can call a friend and has his back whenever he is in trouble, and that makes him really happy. Meanwhile, back at the training room, Romantika has finally managed to accomplish the goal of getting the ball in the circle with magic, but as she celebrates, she realizes that no one was there to record and post it to YouTube, so did it even happen? After she's done being upset, she gets up and tries to go for the other training method that Dazir had proposed and pulls up several magic spells at once, firing them all at the same spot and managing to successfully complete them. She is proud of herself, but there is still something that she has to do, so she heads to an alpha class cafeteria to meet Danetta. They head to the cafeteria and he treats her to a meal as he asks if she has finally come up with an answer to his proposition. She says she has, but it may not be what he is expecting as she has come to turn down his proposal. He asks if this means she doesn't want to go out with him, and while that is true, she also has another reason. She joined a party in beta class, and though she didn't really like it at first, she is starting to have fun now. She also brings up that Donetta had said all the students in beta class were nothing but trash, which he still believes, but Romantika drops the truth and tells him that she used to be a commoner as well. And I've never seen someone's face change so quickly. He skipped all the stages and went straight to disgust. He regains his composure and thinks she must have been joking when she said that, but she was really serious about it. That is why she was put in beta class even though she's a noble. But she's fine with being in beta class since her party members wouldn't look at her in disgust like he just did. Donetta says he wouldn't have invited her to join if he had known she was a commoner, and Romantika gets up to leave, commenting on how Desir was right about what Donetta's reaction would be. Before she leaves, she tells him that her party plans to get promoted to Alpha class, so that makes them enemies from now on, and also thanks him for the delicious food. And Donetta is seething rage as he recalls the reason why he hates the commoners, as during a revolution, they had killed his parents right before his eyes. This was the end of episode 6. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.